Visual effects are so ever-present in almost every single movie these days, even in the ones you don't realise, that it can be easy to take it for granted. There's no denying the incredible artistry, time, effort and money that goes into even mediocre visual effects, though as the industry stands on the precipice of a reckoning over how Hollywood treats its visual effects artists, it's also clear that corner cutting can result in incredibly lackluster CGI being released into the world. In a good enough movie, bad visual effects need not be a huge issue, though they can certainly upend a particular scene or leave audiences wincing no matter how much they like the film otherwise. And then there are the effects that are so bafflingly wonky, often in films that cost upwards of $200 million, that you do have to wonder what the hell went wrong. And so with that in mind, I'm Ellie with What Culture, here with the 10 worst CGI moments from 2022 movies. Number 10. The Ironheart suit in Black Panther: Wakanda Forever. Now, unlike most of the movies on this list, Black Panther: Wakanda Forever was genuinely a good film, especially considering the circumstances of its creation. And while there are a number of visually stunning sequences throughout, it also received widespread criticism for several of its suit designs, and never more than with Riri Williams' ridiculous final Ironheart suit. Williams shows it off briefly in the third act of the movie, and it sucks. Now, it doesn't help that the suit looks innately quite cartoonish and silly, like something you'd expect to see in a Power Rangers episode. One can only hope that the suit will look somewhat sharper in the upcoming Disney Plus series, because this over-designed plasticky aesthetic just wasn't quite right. Number 9. The plane escape in The Grey Man. The Russo brothers' The Grey Man is one of 2022's most disappointing films, yet perhaps the most flabbergasting aspect of this rather generic blockbuster is how atrocious the CGI frequently looks for a $200 million movie. And this is never more apparent than during the horrendous first act sequence where Six ends up free-falling from a flaming plane. The minute-long sequence is a headache-inducing mess of blurry, goopy visual effects that borders on incomprehensible. A terrible 3D model of Ryan Gosling falling through a hideous smoky sky environment while trying to grab hold of a bad guy who jumped before him. The Russos' decision to continually spin the camera around doesn't make it any better, and while few films have the logistical capability to do this stunt practically, short of hiring Tom Cruise of course, there's no reason the effects should look this ugly. The fact that the guys who directed Avengers: Infinity War and Endgame followed up with this blockbuster that's rather amateur looking despite costing about the same amount as your average MCU film is rather shocking. Number 8. The PS3 caliber car chase in Moonfall. Though Roland Emmerich's latest and possibly last disaster spectacle Moonfall offers up a ton of visually dazzling digital carnage, it's also clear that the visual effects teams devoted more of their resources to the large-scale mayhem rather than the smaller contained set pieces. Case in point, we have the hilariously awful car chase where Sonny, Tom and Tom's kids are pursued by a gang of shotgun-toting thieves, leading to an eyesore of a vehicular chase that wouldn't look amiss in a PS3 game cutscene. From the lo-fi 3D renders of the cars, to the janky physics, unconvincing background elements, and how poorly the actors are all composited into the environment, it's a grotesque laugh riot that would appear more at home in an asylum knockoff of an Emmerich film, rather than one from the blockbuster auteur himself. The fact that such a scene made it into a $150 million tentpole is all the proof you need that Hollywood's blockbuster accounting is hella suspicious. Number 7. Totally not Egypt in Death on the Nile. Kenneth Branagh's Death on the Nile could only fully succeed if its visual effects could believably transport the audience to Egypt. And while the film is often fun, it would seem that even a $90 million budget was not enough to pull off some decent green screen compositing. The majority of the film was shot on sound stages in England, with the backdrops then being filled in from footage shot on location in Egypt from Branagh's second unit crew. The primary issue is that the camera and lighting setups rarely match properly, ensuring viewers are acutely aware they're looking at something totally fake. The most obvious scenes involve Poirot talking to Book by the pyramids and when Jackie de Belfort first boards the ship. The green screen work is hilariously poor and especially unfortunate given the film's attempts to sell itself as an exotic adventure featuring a gorgeous cast in a far-flung locale. Instead, we're constantly reminded that this film was not in fact shot in Egypt, but in some drab warehouse against a green curtain somewhere in London. Number 6. Skinny Dwayne Johnson in Black Adam. Black Adam is further proof that $200 million does not a pretty movie make. As for all its fantastical action, it's a consistently ugly-looking film that's full of egregiously unconvincing effects. Yet the most off-putting of the lot must surely be when a flashback reveals Adam's human form, Teth Adam, from thousands of years ago. Teth Adam is of course much skinnier than his superhuman self, and so the filmmakers decided to just paste Dwayne Johnson's head onto a body double. The problem is that the cut and paste job looks consistently uncanny throughout these shots, because the subtle physicality of Johnson's face just doesn't mesh that well with the body double. Now, given that skinny Steve in Captain America: The First Avenger was considerably more believable over a decade ago, it's rather embarrassing that this is scarcely better than something a half-talented amateur visual effects artist could pull off in their bedroom on a weekend. Number 5. Digitally de-aged Catherine Keener in The Adam Project. While not the worst offender for lackluster digital de-aging on this list, The Adam Project is certainly the most extensive. Sean Levy's not bad time travel adventure film makes the bold decision to have its primary villain, Maya Saurian, travel back 32 years in the past to meet her younger self. And despite the incredible advances made in de-aging tech in the last 5 years alone, the younger version of Maya looks more like a deep fake somebody cooked up on their underpowered laptop over a lazy afternoon. It's especially troubling because young Maya is on screen a lot in the third act. And while the ambition is laudable, a $116 million project should be able to accomplish better than this. And if they couldn't, they should have just hired another actress to play young Maya. Number 4. Axel's floating head in Thor: Love and Thunder. Thor: Love and Thunder's visual presentation received generally mixed reviews from fans and critics alike, with many noting the apparent overuse of the volume technology, possibly due to the pandemic, which resulted in most of the environments in the film looking rather small and confined. But by far the most ridiculed visual effects moment of the entire movie involved Thor having a quick chit-chat with Heimdall's son Axel, who had been kidnapped by Gore the God Butcher. Axel manages to communicate with Thor by appearing to him as a floating head. The theatrical version of the scene was widely mocked for looking like a cheaply thrown together digital cutout without any discernible style whatsoever. In fact, fans were so vocal about it that Disney actually went back and fixed the CGI for the home release, but the improvement was incremental at best and it still didn't look all that great. Number 3. Matt Smith's Snapchat filter vampire face in Morbius. Oh, Morbius. It was such a disappointing slice of cinema, and yet the source of quite a lot of entertainment, perhaps not for the right reasons, in the form of memes and ridicule. In the very least, it seems that Matt Smith knew precisely the sort of schlockfest he was starring in and provided some periodic relief with his shamelessly campy performance as villain Milo. And it's just as well because given the totally risible visual effects applied to his face whenever he transforms into his vampiric alter ego, it's absolutely impossible to take him seriously as a genuine threat. Numerous times throughout the film we see Smith snarl as his face contorts into the countenance of a monstrous vampire creature. But the end result looks scarcely better than a free filter effect you'll find on apps like Snapchat and FaceTime. Now, even accepting that Morbius was only a mid-budget superhero movie made for around $80 million, you can't help but feel like they should have just put a little bit more time and effort into those transformation effects, which to me seem a little bit reminiscent of Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Number 2. Young Sylvester Stallone in Samaritan. The Sylvester Stallone starring superhero movie Samaritan came and went in a blip this past summer. And sadly, the moment that audiences are likely to remember the most is a fleeting burst of truly ghastly de-aging CGI. In the film's climax, we're shown a brief flashback to aged superhero Joe's younger days, complete with a visual effects assisted effort to make Sly look decades younger. Except despite allegedly having a $100 million budget, a figure that's honestly very hard to believe, the fidelity of young Stallone is embarrassingly rough, suggesting that the production lacked either the funds, time, or both to get it done properly. While the Marvel Cinematic Universe has perhaps made audiences take the magic of digital de-aging for granted, Samaritan is an off-putting reminder of just how much work and money goes into it. Though, unlike the Adam Project's botched de-aging of Catherine Keener, at least in this film it's only for about 30 seconds. Number 1. The CGI graveyard in Jeepers Creepers Reborn. The latest Jeepers Creepers Reborn movie is, to be kind, a darn hot mess. A low-effort, no-budget attempt to extend the dying horror franchise. But beyond the low budget, it was also shot during a particularly tricky period of the pandemic. And while that's challenging for any movie production, it's particularly tough for a production with minimal resources. And so a lot of Reborn was shot on green screen stages instead of actual sets, with the sets simply being created digitally in post. And while mega budget movies are capable of pulling this off with sufficient care, it's much more difficult to execute without tens or even hundreds of millions of dollars at your disposal. Unsurprisingly, the CGI sets throughout the movie are ridiculously distracting, and never more than when the film's victims venture to a graveyard. Between the hilariously lo-fi environment and the fact that the actors' lighting frequently doesn't match the environmental lighting, it looks less like a professional movie than a student filmmaker practicing their craft. For a horror franchise of note to plummet to these depths isn't just frustrating or funny, but it's also genuinely sad as well. And that concludes our list. If you think we missed anything, then do let us know in the comments below. And while you're there, don't forget to like and subscribe and tap that notification bell. Also, head over to Twitter and follow us there. And I can be found across various social medias just by searching Ellie Littlechild. I've been Ellie with What Culture. I hope you have a magical day, and I'll see you real soon.